The first sound that cut through the boardroom that afternoon was a file hitting wood, hard, sharp, final. Then the lawyer's voice rose, raw with disbelief. He fired the architect of the system he just used. He fired her on his first day. No one answered him. The room was frozen. A tight ring of executives staring at Ethan Reese as if they had finally seen what had been sitting in front of them all morning. Ethan tried to sit taller, shoulders stiff, chin lifted, pretending the walls were not closing in on him. But his eyes darted first to the legal team, then to the board chair, then to the stack of documents that spelled out the mistake he refused to acknowledge. I listened from the hallway, my back pressed to the cool wall, hands trembling even though the anger in his voice was not aimed at me. My name echoed through the room like an accusation. But I was not inside. I was not invited. I was already gone. My name is Marin Harlow. For 8 years, I was chief architect at Nova Strand Systems. Today, I was escorted out of the building before lunch. I thought the worst part had been the moment Ethan looked me dead in the eye and said, "From now on, I run this company, you are done here." But as I stood outside the glass door of that boardroom, hearing them unravel the mess he created, I realized I had been wrong. That moment had not been the bottom. This was. The lawyer slapped another document onto the table. Her signature is on every compliance file, every deployment license, every audit trail. You bypassed legal obligations that protect this company. You cannot fire someone whose approval you need to operate. Chairs scraped. Someone cursed under their breath. Ethan muttered, "I don't need her. The team can handle it. The team cannot sign legal paperwork." The lawyer shot back, "Only the architect of record can." A silence followed that felt heavier than anything that happened to me that morning. I stayed where I was, invisible behind the door, listening as they spoke about me like a missing structural beam in a collapsing building. I had no idea yet just how far the collapse would spread. The memory of that morning still hits me like a shove between the shoulder blades. I had barely set my coffee on my desk when the internal announcement flashed across my screen, "Executive Leadership Transition Update." I remember whispering, "This is too early for surprises," just as Ethan Reese stepped into the hallway with the kind of strut that only comes from rehearsing in a mirror. He spotted me instantly. "Marin," he said, drawing out my name as if tasting it. "Big day for the company." I kept my voice steady. "I heard there were changes." He laughed a short, practiced sound. "Changes are necessary when a firm wants real innovation. You understand." I understood more than he realized. Years ago, at Helix Soft. I had guided him through basic architecture diagrams he claimed to understand but never did. There was a night when he pushed a deployment live without review, and I pulled him aside before it caused irreversible damage. He spent the following week avoiding me, unable to look me in the eye. His insecurity then was almost painful to watch. Seeing him now, wrapped in false confidence, dredged up memories I thought I had outgrown. He stepped closer. Nova Strand hired me to shake the dust off. Vision, speed, execution. That is what I bring, I replied quietly. Execution requires accuracy. His jaw tensed. Accuracy is overrated when you have momentum. Behind him, a few department heads appeared, drawn by the announcement. Ethan turned toward them, puffing his chest slightly. "Everyone, gather in the conference room. I will outline restructuring and technical redirection." Restructuring, technical redirection. Those words meant something very different when spoken by a man whose pride depended on proving he was no longer the junior engineer I once corrected. On the way to the conference room, he glanced back at me. The look was sharp, deliberate, almost triumphant, as if he had been waiting years for this moment. I walked behind him, trying to ignore the sensation building in my chest. Something about the way he carried himself felt practiced, like a performance designed for a single audience me. Ethan insisted on an all-hands meeting before the morning even settled. People were still carrying their first coffees when he stepped to the front of the conference room and clapped sharply, demanding attention. "Let us begin," he said, pacing as if the floor belonged to him. "This company needs direction. Clear, decisive direction. No more slow processes. No more outdated leadership habits." Someone from finance tried to ask about the restructuring memo, but Ethan cut him off with a raised hand. "Questions will come later. Right now, you listen." He scanned the room with a smug confidence that made my stomach tighten. Then his eyes landed on me. The shift in the air was immediate. "Marin Harlow," he said, voice ringing across the room. "Stand up." I felt dozens of heads turn. I stood slowly, keeping my breathing steady. Ethan folded his arms. "From now on, I run this company. You are fired." A sharp inhale echoed from somewhere near the back. A few hands froze mid-note. Someone dropped a pen. He leaned closer, savoring the moment. Hand over everything. "Now." My throat burned, but my voice did not break. "You want my badge and company equipment. That is all you are entitled to." His jaw twitched. "Do not play games. Hand over all architectural material." I held his stare. "Anything tied to my role as architect of record is protected under contract." "You know that?" Murmurs rippled across the room. Ethan's smile faltered for the first time. He waved dismissively. "Security will escort you." I placed my badge on the table, set down the laptop, and gathered the folders that belonged to the company. The documents with my signature stayed in my bag, untouched and legally mine. No one spoke as I walked toward the door. Some looked away. Some looked ashamed. All of it pressed on my chest as I stepped into the hallway, feeling the weight of 1,000 unspoken thoughts behind me. In the quiet of the small storage room the company called a temporary off-boarding space, I opened my folder and slid out the contract I had signed 8 years earlier. My hands were still unsteady from the humiliation downstairs, but the words on the page steadied me. My title, Chief Architect of Record, sat in bold type. Every major deployment, license extension, integration, or investor demonstration required my written approval. No exceptions, no substitutes. Ethan had either skimmed this or never bothered reading it at all. My phone buzzed, and the screen filled with messages from coworkers. "I am so sorry. Marin, I did not know he would do that. Please forgive me for not speaking up." I typed nothing. My chest ached too much to form a reply. These were people I had trained, defended, covered for, believed in. Now they were afraid to even be seen helping me carry a box. I placed my coffee mug inside the cardboard crate, then my plant, then the framed photo of my sister, the one who had loaned me money when I first moved to Austin. A cold wave hit when I remembered rent, prescriptions, the rising insurance payments, humiliation mixed with a creeping fear I could not shake. Still, beneath all of that, there was a hard, steady truth. Ethan had no idea what he had torn down. I had spent my early career at Helix Soft watching a lead engineer steal credit for my code. I swore then that no one would ever take my work or my name again. That is why every blueprint, every compliance file, every approval gate carried my signature and not the company's. Another notification popped up, this one from the engineering group thread. Ethan's message cut through the screen. "We need a full system demo for the investors today. No delays. Run the new build immediately. No request for architectural approval. No legal clearance. No understanding of what those missing signatures meant." I closed the contract and placed it gently on top of my things, feeling the first threads of his recklessness pulling tighter around the company he thought he controlled. The first call came before I had even finished loading the last box into my car. My phone buzzed with a familiar name, Neil, one of the senior engineers who had been with me since the early prototypes. I answered on the second ring. His voice shook. "Marin, can you check your messages right now?" I unlocked my phone and saw a flood of system-generated emails piling into my inbox. Each subject line carried the same phrase Architect of Record Authorization required. The timestamps were minutes apart, urgent, escalating. I opened one, and the alert expanded with a red banner stating that a deployment had been pushed live without proper review. They tried to run the build, I murmured. Neil exhaled sharply. Tried, they forced it. Ethan stood in our workspace and said we had 10 minutes to make it happen. In the background, I heard shouting panicked voices, keyboards clattering, someone swearing loudly. Neil, what is happening over there? He lowered his voice as if afraid someone might hear. The moment we bypassed the approval gates, the system started locking down. API calls are failing. The new feature is looping. Dashboards in marketing are frozen. Operations cannot access any of the workflow tools. Another alert appeared on my screen. Then another. Then 10 more. I felt my pulse rise. Each alert meant a blocked function, a triggered safeguard, a record of unauthorized action tied directly to Ethan's command. Investors are arriving in less than 2 hours, Neil whispered. He said the demo had to run no matter what. I swallowed hard. Neil, the system is not malfunctioning. It is defending itself. Those approval gates exist for legal reasons. He was quiet for a moment. We told him. He did not listen. The next alert was labeled Escalation Level 2. That level only triggered when a deployment threatened contractual terms with major clients' terms worth more than $10 million. My fingers tightened around the phone. Ethan had not just crossed a line. He had detonated it. By early afternoon, another wave of alerts filled my inbox, each one louder than the last. Then Neil sent a short message. They pulled everyone into a boardroom. It is bad. Moments later, my phone lit up again. Ethan is blaming you. I did not go back inside the building. I simply stood across the street, close enough to see movement through the tinted glass, far enough to remain unseen. Inside, the meeting exploded almost immediately. Ethan's voice carried first. This is not my fault. The system has legacy issues. Marin slowed progress for months. I inherited a mess. A board member cut him off. We saw the dashboards melt down in real time. Are you saying our flagship product collapsed because of her? Ethan straightened his tie. Her processes were outdated. I am streamlining. Some resistance is expected. Another voice entered cold. Controlled. The board's attorney, Mason Firth. Before we continue, I reviewed the contract files. He opened the folder with a deliberate motion. Chief Architect of Record Marin Harlow. Ethan's expression twitched. That is just a title. Mason slammed the file on the table. This title controls every deployment, every investor demonstration, every compliance audit. You executed a build that legally required her approval. A silence followed. Then Mason stood. You fired the architect of the system you just used. You did that on your first day. Someone from investor relations leaned forward. Are you telling us he bypassed every compliance gate tied to a contract worth more than $10 million? Ethan's voice cracked. You are overreacting. The team will fix it. The team cannot fix a legal breach, Mason replied. Nor can they sign architecture approvals in her place. That signature is not optional. The investors whispered among themselves, faces tight with alarm. The board members exchanged glances that no longer held patience. They were not looking for answers anymore. They were looking for accountability. And from the doorway, I could see the shift take hold. My absence had become the fulcrum of the entire disaster. My phone rang while I was still standing on the sidewalk, the boardroom windows reflecting a storm I no longer belonged to. I almost declined the call when I saw the number, but something in my chest tightened, and I answered. Marin. A calm voice said. It was Elaine Mercer, the board chair. We need to speak with you. Today. I kept my tone measured. About the system. About stabilizing the company. She replied. Can you come back inside? A bitter laugh escaped before I could stop it. I was escorted out less than 4 hours ago. Elaine exhaled, the sound strained. That was not our directive. Things have escalated. We are asking for your help. Help. I repeated quietly. Or absolution. She paused. I know you were mistreated this morning, but we cannot move forward without your expertise. The honesty in her voice cut deeper than the humiliation had. I looked down at the cardboard box at my feet. The sum of 8 years reduced to a handful of objects. Rent was due in 2 weeks. My medication refill was not cheap. Healthcare coverage would vanish at midnight. And somewhere inside that building, people I had trained were being shouted at for decisions they never made. I swallowed hard. I will consider assisting, but not under Ethan. Elaine hesitated. Removing a chief executive requires careful. I will not step inside a room he has authority over. A long silence stretched between us. Then she spoke. Lower, as if choosing her wording carefully. We have already begun internal discussions. His position is no longer secure. The shift landed like a stone. If you provide an external assessment, she continued, the board will use it to determine next steps. I will review the system logs from home. I said, nothing more for now. Thank you. Marin, she answered softly. You may have just given us the path out of this. Her words lingered long after the call ended. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open, the system logs stretching across the screen in long lines of time-stamped truth. Every override command carried Ethan's authorization, every forced deployment showed his insistence, and every blocked approval gate highlighted the exact places where my signature should have been. Neil called me once, voice low. He made us do it. Marin. He said if we questioned him, we were resisting progress. I know, I said quietly. I can see it in the logs. The deeper I dug, the clearer the picture became. Unauthorized escalations, security bypass attempts, deployment launches without compliance review, even a recorded instance of Ethan rewriting a commit note to make it appear he had contributed to the architecture. I compiled everything into a structured report, facts only. No emotion. Then I added the old HelixSoft entry I had never erased from my private notes the night Ethan tried to push broken code to production, and I stopped him minutes before a total system collapse. It was not revenge. It was context. A pattern. Elaine called as soon as the board received my file. We need you to listen, she said. She put the phone on speaker. I heard Ethan shouting in the background. She is lying, he barked. Those logs can be faked. The engineers misunderstood my instructions. Mason, the attorney, answered him with a calm blade of a voice. The logs came directly from the core servers. They match the timestamps of your access card and workstation. Someone else added. You told us you had led architecture teams before. These records show otherwise. Papers rustled, chairs shifted. The weight of evidence pressed down until Ethan's voice cracked. She always made me look incompetent. Ever since HelixSoft, she wanted this. No, Ethan, Elaine said. You did this to yourself. A vote followed, unanimous, immediate suspension, with removal pending legal review. The call disconnected, leaving only the quiet hum of my apartment and the undeniable truth of what the audit had revealed. 2 days after the board suspended Ethan, Elaine called again. This time her tone was clipped, almost businesslike. The Regulatory Technology Commission has requested your full report. We have already forwarded the logs. I felt the breath leave my chest. They are opening an investigation. They have begun one, she said. His decisions crossed into professional misconduct. They want statements from everyone involved. By that evening, the commission had reviewed the logs, the forced overrides, the compliance violations, and the false authorship claims. Their determination arrived less than 24 hours later. Ethan's professional credential would be suspended indefinitely, pending a longer inquiry. It was the kind of censure that followed a person for life. Industry chatter spread fast. Neil texted me. People are saying no company will touch him now. Another message came from a former colleague. He tried to blame you in an interview. They laughed him out of the room. The next morning, Ethan attempted to call me. When I declined, he sent a string of messages. You ruined me. You always wanted control. Please. I need to explain. Marin, I am begging you. I blocked the number. Instead, I focused on the assessment I owed the board. My laptop screen glowed as I laid out a technical roadmap detailing how to stabilize the core architecture, restore the approval gates, and rebuild client trust. It took hours of concentration to shape it into something the company could use without falling back into chaos. When Elaine called about the final document, I stated my terms clearly. If I assist going forward, it must be as an independent overseer. No executive, including the next chief executive, will have authority over my architectural decisions. Silence landed on the line, followed by a steady breath. Those conditions are reasonable. Marin, I sent the final file before midnight, the cursor blinking one last time as the company braced itself for whatever came next. Elaine called early the next morning and asked me to come in. Her voice carried a steadiness that had not been there before. The kind that follows a decision no one can walk back. When I stepped into the boardroom, every seat was filled. No one avoided my eyes this time. Elaine gestured for me to sit. We have reviewed your terms, she said. After consulting with legal, we are creating a new role, Independent Technical Ethics and Architecture Overseer. You will report directly to the board. No chief executive will have the authority to override your approvals. A murmur moved through the room as she continued. This position exists because the company failed to protect its core systems. We are correcting that failure. If you accept, your authority will be higher than any executive on the technical chain. I set my bag on the table. I will not return as an employee. I said, not after what happened. You will not be an employee. Mason added, your contract defines you as a legally independent authority. Your work belongs to you. The relief that moved through me was quiet but sharp, a release I had held back since the moment Ethan told me to hand over everything. When I walked back through the halls, people who looked away days earlier stepped toward me. Neil shook my hand, eyes bright with something that looked like relief. You deserved this long before now, he said. I thanked him and continued on until I reached the empty auditorium. The same space where I had stood while Ethan tore my career apart now felt strangely still. I touched the back of one chair, letting the silence settle. I had never needed revenge. I had only needed the truth to be seen. My new office was small, tucked beside a server review room, but the key in my hand felt heavier than anything I had carried out of the building that day. I closed the door behind me, knowing that for the first time, the narrative was mine alone to shape.